So I mean, what a trip it's been to get here. Okay, I've got this story that I was telling Brody before you got here about that fabric right there. That piece of fabric was so much trouble. Everything else in this room was relatively easy to get. That piece of fabric there, $10. You know how long it took me to get that? It took me an hour. Okay, I went to a Walmart, and I went with the intention of, okay, well, Colin knocked a hole in the door. We had to get the door out, so we have to put a piece of cloth over the door now. So I went to Walmart. I go to the fabric section, just perusing the selection, and nobody's there. That's sort of like a Chekhov's gun of sorts. I was just like browsing it, and nobody was there, and I was like, okay, that might be a problem. So I spent 10 or 20 minutes just like looking through the stock, and then I was like firmly decided on this. And I'm like, I take it to the counter, and nobody comes. Oh. Nobody. So I'm sitting there for the next 10 or 15 minutes, just sort of, I go through a couple of phases. At first I'm just sitting there patiently. Then I start drumming, and then I start singing like Christmas carols. I'm super bored. And eventually, thank God, our Savior comes. Karen comes to the back of the store, and this woman is business. This is Miss Business right here. She's wearing like a track suit. She's like jogging down the aisle. She knows what she wants. This is a woman that knows what she wants. She goes to picks it right off. And she comes up to me and she was like, "Do you work here?" And I'm like, "Well, no, I've been waiting here for like half an hour." And she's like, "That won't do." And she storms off and she goes off. And I'm like, 2 minutes left. She comes back. She's like, "Okay, I talked to somebody. They said they work in electronics." So she was like, they didn't give me any help. I was like, "You work here, don't you?" And she goes off again. A minute and a half later, I hear, "Diane, will you come to Fabrics?" And then she comes back and she's like, "One of us has to be the bitch. I know you don't want to be the bitch. I'll be the bitch. Don't worry. And we get to talking. She strikes me as, a sort of creative person. She struck me as like sort of a Spencer Shay from iCarly type. She had some sort of sculpture that she was getting up to. That's what she needed all the fabrics for. And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm starting a podcast, and I need this fabric because Colin knocked a hole in the door." So she was like, really concerned about Colin. I was like, "No, he's 16. He's just a boy." And she was like, "Maybe he has anger issues." So not only was Karen, helping me out here, she was also, offering advice to me and my brother, which was great. Like 3 minutes passed, and then she's pissed again. She goes back, and I swear, I was waiting for another, 5 or 10 minutes. Mind you, 45 minutes had passed at this point in the story. And she comes back with this, I swear, on a chain.
Is it an elderly woman?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the same one who, refused to help
60,
me for, an hour.
60, and her name is Diane, and she's probably a lovely woman. But she comes back, and a poor woman doesn't even have any of her stuff in order. It's just a mess. She doesn't have any tags, anything at all. So I think the moral of the story is, as much as we hate Karens get shit done. I would have been sitting there all night if it hadn't been for this woman to come and just get me this fabric. So, I mean, the studio wouldn't have been complete. Karen, if you're listening to this podcast, thank you so much.
Did you tell her the podcast name?
No, I didn't tell her the podcast.
Great, so
Karen's never going to find it. You can't even find it if you look it up. At this point, we have to get into the podcast.
What's a podcast? Quick.
It's
define the word
when
podcast.
A couple of friends get together and they decide to shoot the shit for an hour. That's essentially what this podcast is. So, it is also the reason why my relatives aren't going to be talking to me this Easter. I told all my relatives, by the way. I told my grandpapa. I told my cousins. They know about this podcast. I haven't told them what the name is. They know I have a podcast, and they're going to be asking next time. And as soon as I tell them, they're going to be regretful. They're going to disassociate with me. They're not going to talk to me ever again. Yes, essentially.
You shouldn't do visual jokes on a podcast. That's just...
Yeah, for the audience at home, we're referring to Michael Savage's liberalism is a mental disorder. Antonia, can you give us the lore behind this wonderful book? How did you acquire such a novel?
So my family knows I'm pretty not very conservative, and so my grandmother apparently saw this in a store and thought of me and decided to mail it to me for Christmas. So it's 3 days after Christmas, and my dad goes, "Oh, Antonia, your grandmother sent you a gift," because this is the grandmother I don't talk to often.
Mhm.
And he pulls it up and he goes, "Okay, here for my mom," and gives her socks. And then he gives me this. He just hands me the book. It's all wrapped up. And so I'm like, okay, it's probably a book. And I started unwrapping it, and the first word I see is liberalism.
Oh,
And I know immediately.
no. Oh, okay. Well, there's not too much liberal propaganda that we have today. I mean, if we have enough time towards the end of the podcast, we'll get into like something that's vaguely political, but most of this is just what we did, because we celebrated New Year together, didn't we? We had a hell of a time, right? Antonio, what did we do for New Year's? What did we do together?
We murdered. I didn't murder someone. A friend murdered someone.
A friend murdered someone, definitely. And I don't know how we came to this idea, but like at some point last year, one of us was like, "Oh, dude, it's 2020. We ought to do like a 1920s murder party, Roaring 20s. That'd be so fun." So we ended up doing it. I don't know if you've actually paid for you've paid for the stuff, but nobody paid you to run it, right? Have you gotten any of the money yet?
That's an easy question. I made my sister deal with the money because I was not going to be $50 a day.
Okay, yeah. So we had a hell of a time, and then unfortunately one of us bit the dust. So we tried our hearts out, actually. I know that you specially ordered something for you had like a coat or something that we were waiting for.
I did get it. My mother went to a thrift store and got me a fur coat.
Well, so you were waiting on your mom to bring you the
fur coat.
the
Yes,
fur coat.
I did get the fur coat. It was right after the murder had happened, so it was very dramatic to slip on the fur coat.
And of course, you were Antonio was the owner of this fine establishment that was known as the Juice Joint. So she was sort of prestigious, and unfortunately, her husband died. It was terrible. Me, on the other hand, I showed up as my brother would dress. Really, I had like a gold chain. I had an arm holster. Funny is, Antonia, she's Hispanic, but she lives in the whitest neighborhood. Her neighborhood is whiter than my neighborhood.
I have a white picket fence, Davis.
Antonia has a white picket fence. So I go out, I have this armpit holster, and her neighbor is shooting me dirty looks. I mean, I just went out because somebody gave me a present and I had to put it back in my car. And I walk out, and this poor guy, Clemson hoodie, he's just putting stuff in the back seat of his car. And I'm walking, he's shooting me the nastiest look. And I'm squatted up. I got Mayor Biggs, Sam Austin in the tuxedo. I got Michael Reed. He's all spiffied up. And we're just intimidating. We're just a real intimidating bunch, aren't we?
That man owns a Hobby Lobby, so if that explains to you how Christian he is.
Oh, no, definitely very Christian. He would have, executed us on the spot, probably.
Crucifixion.
Yeah,
my
crucifixion.
family's mega Christian, and my dad keeps it strapped up. I can tell you that much.
Well, I imagine we all have very conservative relatives, as evidenced by liberalism, and again with the prop humor. Liberalism as a mental disorder. Read it today, Michael Savage. Great book.
There's an entire sentence on how Martin Luther King would not go stand up for drag queen rights.
Oh, ridiculous. Absolutely insane. All right, so we had this murder mystery. We had a very colorful cast of characters, right? We had Mayor Biggs, which the only thing he could say was,
"I'm Mayor Biggs."
"I'm Mayor Biggs, baby." Full name, Mayor Biggs. Who else did we have?
Notorious Nick.
We had the Notorious Nick.
He was the North Side mob boss.
That was Josh Gaborio, very gay, very tall.
You were very gay, but not very tall.
Not very tall. I'm shy of 6.
Hey.
I don't know if we've mentioned it. Guys, this is the Shy of 6 podcast. I don't think I mentioned that, but
You
this is the Shy.
probably
I didn't. I'm an amateur, guys. I'm an amateur. We also had Bernie Booze, played by Tyler Wilson.
Bootlegger, yeah.
Bootlegger. Got blacklisted by Nick, actually. So maybe that's a motive, because spoiler alert, Nick dies. It's a
I
tragedy.
can't believe you would spoil this murder mystery.
I know. Who else was there? Was CJ?
His name was Cy.
Cy
Ramsey.
Cy Ramsey. He was Nick's nephew, and he wanted to work his way up. Maybe that's a motive. Who knows? Who knows? We don't know, folks. Well, we know, but you don't know, unless you were in the murder mystery. Yeah, one thing. Okay, so Cy Ramsey, played by Toma Susan.
Mm-hmm.
Toma shows up, probably the most well-dressed person there. He shows up in the hoodie. He shows up in the sweatpants. Did he end up putting the suspenders on? Please tell me.
He put suspenders on over his hoodie and tucked his hoodie into these sweatpants, and then he took them off. So I just have suspenders now.
We have Cameron Rotier, and you should know, like, right off the bat, never trust a French guy. This guy is nothing but trouble. He was the police chief.
But we didn't know his last name at first.
That's true.
He was just Chief Cameron.
We didn't know. We didn't know until we took a look at the ledger. We had the documents. We looked at the evidence. We've got Rose. Who is Rose?
Marie. That was me.
Rosie
Marie.
Could you explain Rose's character?
So the paper said she was bossy and authoritative, but she was a woman who had just inherited this speakeasy after her husband had died.
And Tony got so rude with me. She got really testy. She was in character, obviously. But, like, she played that. She killed her role. She was really, really good. And the fur coat suited her very nicely. And, of course, we had my character. She scolded Southside Sal, who talked like this the entire time. He hailed from South Carolina, the dark corner. So,
this was set in, like... Where was this set? I don't know. So
it was set in Chicago,
it was
but
set
like
in Chicago.
he was Southside Sal. I realized the day of that I'd been working on my southern accent, but it was actually set in Chicago. So I don't know. I showed up and I was just utterly unprepared.
I just got to be like
considering Toma was wearing sweatpants and a hoodie, I think you did all right.
I did all right. In fact,
right.
by the end of the evening, they had nominated me for being the best actor of the night. I was honored. I don't think anybody cared, but I cared so much, obviously. So let's get into the chronological rundown of what happened. Okay, so this happened in sort of two phases, this murder mystery, right? So we had the mingling phase, and then we had, the actual investigation phase. So what were your goals going into the mingling phase?
So right off the bat, I had to give a speech, obviously, because when we had purchased
it was
the
a terribly written speech.
Oh, it was so bad.
I don't know who wrote it, but it was
the website.
Bad.
We bought it off like nightofmystery.com, and they had a special New Year's Eve thing we could do, and we were like, okay, fine, it's New Year's. So I had to give this whole speech about thank you for celebrating New Year's with us and ringing in the New Year. As you all know, my husband's dead. We're doing this in memory of my dead husband. So I had to do that, and then the mingling. So my goals, I think, were to figure out how close Flora was with my husband.
Mm-hmm.
What else was it? I needed to get Cy promoted to police chief, or I had to at least talk to someone about it.
Mm-hmm.
That was like one of the big goals was figuring out from Nick where we were, and then talking to Bernie about why I couldn't buy his booze or whatever.
Okay,
and then I had to talk to you and figure out.
You accused me of murder. I was so worried. She came up to me and she was like, "You murdered my husband," and I'm like, "Oh, why would I do that?"
My goal literally said, accuse Southside Sal of murder. If he says no, ask for proof.
I didn't know. I was shocked. I didn't know what to say at all because I was like, well, I think Nick placed a hit, but then Nick died, so it was like, is this a cover-up or something? So, I went into it as Southside Sal. My goals were to speak with Cameron, actually.
Oh, okay.
So, Cameron, I was in cahoots with Cameron from the beginning. He was the police chief, and he was worried about getting fired from his job as police chief. I had to speak with the mayor. I had to sort of levy my influence of the mayor to sort of seize control of the north side. I was the south side boss. I was a big shit in the south. I went north and I was like a carpetbagger, just like a reverse carpetbagger, right?
Yeah.
So I had my own goals, and then shit hit the fan. Isn't that right, Antonia?
Oh, it did. Oh, I also forgot. One of my goals was assure anyone that asks you about your husband that his death will be avenged. It really wanted me to place suspicion on myself so bad, because then Nick dies. Yeah. Right, and you had already told me that Nick had placed a hit on my husband, and everyone already suspected me of killing my husband because of the whole business because I would be getting tons of money.
Yeah.
So then dude like goes to propose to his girlfriend, then he just dies.
He just dies. Okay, and they turn off the lights too. Like, I didn't see shit. And then Josh was just on the floor. Man was floored. Izzy came up, she started like putting the tape around Josh, and then she gave up because it was just too much. So then we get into the second phase of this terrible, horrible murder mystery. So do you remember at all what your goals going into this? Who did you suspect at first?
So I think just looking at my goal sheet. So my goal sheet was talk to the mayor, ensure that Cy gets promoted, and if he declines, go talk to police chief and get info on the mayor. Mm-hmm. So like I had to do that whole blackmail bullshit. That was a whole mess. And then, because just thinking about it, it didn't tell me I was the murderer, so I was like, okay, it's not me. Mm-hmm. And Nick placed a hit on my husband. Who would I talk to about that? So then, like, I had to talk to you. And I thought you at first. I thought Southside Sal. I really did.
It's never the mafia guy. It's never the mafia guy.
That was my first instinct. And then as we talked, and then I talked to Bernie was telling me how the police chief had raided his place. And so I was like, oh shit, okay, police chief. And that was my, mindset for the entire time. But also, literally one of my goals was, if anyone asks you whether or not you murdered Nick, say that you wouldn't waste a bullet on your cheating husband. So how I phrased it about half the time is, I think Kitty came up to me, the cocktail waitress, because she worked for me, and she was like, I don't mean to be rude, but did you kill him? You know, I knew you had some issues with Nick. And I said to her face, I wouldn't waste a bullet on that cheating son of a bitch. Megan was very surprised.
Yeah. They gave me no such hints, right? People were accusing me, and they didn't give me anything to say, so I had to come up with my own reason. I was like, I was talking to Nick. Actually, I wanted to start a partnership with Nick, and they didn't tell me to do that. I just kind of just went with it. So going into it, my goals had, and again with the prop humor, we have a Hamlet skull on set. I'll be posting pictures on Instagram because I made accounts.
You made an Instagram account?
I made an Instagram.
Oh my god!
Davis,
you can get a Snapchat now.
I can get a Snapchat. Okay, I have a new phone, so I will get a Snapchat.
If you send me pictures of all this stuff, I will, as the prop humor comes up, I will put a picture up for the video.
There it is. This will be a recurring theme on the podcast because we won't have any video element to this at all.
We just talk too much with our hands is the issue.
We really do.
Like, I'm a very hand-talky person. You're a very hand-talky person.
Like, the people that are listening right now, you're missing 40% of this conversation. We're actually talking in sign language this entire time. It's really something. So, I lost my... What?
Nothing.
I lost my train of thought when it comes to the murder. I think I was
talking about how you were getting accused and you had no information.
Yeah, they didn't tell me anything. Okay, and that's sort of... by like halfway through, I started to realize that this wasn't very well written. It was like very obvious, like half an hour into the second phase, who it was. There were like three suspects. What?
How many phases are there?
There were two phases. There was a mingling phase, but where the person didn't die, and then there was the phase after somebody died. So, probably three if you count voting, but
Well, I mean, so there was like the speech.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the speeches kind of preclude all the phases. So there was the speech, and then there was the mingling, and then there was Notorious Nick's speech, like his toast, and then he got murdered. And then there was the investigation, and then there was the there was the PI's speech. About all the evidence, and then there's voting. So.
Yeah. Okay. And again, lost my train of thought.
You were getting accused.
My goals. Yes. Okay. So I had talked with Bernie Booze before that. Yeah. Again, this is like we have no door, so there's like a piece of fabric. There's a piece of fabric between us and the outside world. So if you hear anything, if you hear the TV, if you hear a lawnmower, we're sorry. We can't help it. I had to talk with Bernie Booze because I wanted to get his connections. I wanted to be able to, in some way, connect myself with the North Side. I had to speak with Mayor Biggs because he was starting I'm Mayor Biggs. I'm Mayor Biggs, and he was actually running for governor, so he could be Governor Mayor Biggs because his first name was Mayor.
Well, his middle name was Mayor too, so he was Mayor Biggs. But then with his title, he was Mayor Biggs, and then with the governor's title, it would have been Governor Mayor
There's so much lore. There, like 80% of the lore that ended up, it was all fabricated. Everything was made up. I made up the fact that I was from South Carolina. like Mayor Biggs, like made up all his shit. So like it was a hell of a time.
I made up about half my stuff.
So eventually there was evidence that came to light. Do you remember any of this evidence?
There was like a gun, like the gun was in like
yes.
a violin case.
We found out that Nick he got clipped by a Tommy gun. We didn't hear a Tommy gun. We didn't hear anything. And then there was I got a note put on my back. Somebody essentially like put a kick me note on my back. It said, "Way to go, Davis! You made me lose my job," or something to that effect. There were like initials at the bottom with the initials C, and then you couldn't see the last letter. It was like C, and then like
the top half of
part
a P. It
was
was
like a P or something.
PRB.
There was also what else were there?
There was like who was it? Was it Nick's? No. Yes. Well, yeah, it was Nick's
ledger.
Ledger. Yeah.
Yes.
That's what it was.
So there was like documentation, all his purchases and stuff. So we come to find out that Bernie was actually the one that bought this Tommy gun, right? But there was a qualifier to this. What was the qualifier here? What made it like Bernie bought the gun? Why did he? Of course he killed him, right?
So Bernie bought the gun was registered in Cy Ramsey's name.
Okay.
Because Cy sold the gun to Bernie, so Bernie.
Cy is a gun dealer, by the way.
So he could protect his bootlegging things, and so Bernie had the gun, but then his warehouse for his liquors and stuff got raided by the police.
Bernie
so
Booze sells booze, by the way.
If you didn't know. Oh, by the way, Kitty Cocktail was our cocktail waitress, and Cindy Butt was the cigarette girl.
I didn't get to talk to them at all. Okay, like
I
I felt like there was a half of the stuff that was important, and then the other half was not important.
Oh, absolutely.
So like the movie stuff, I didn't follow the movie stuff.
The
at
movie
all.
stuff had no
Nothing
relevance to
at all.
anything.
I talked with Michael once, and I was like, "Hey, man, you ought to shoot a movie." I'm like trying to talk to him because maybe he has something to say. He was just like, "It's going to be a battle movie.
Like
It's going to be a war movie."
The movie had no relevance.
Of course.
The cocktail waitress had a little relevance, if only because she was dating Cy, but nothing else. Cindy Butt only had relevance because she originally had poisoned Nick, serving him alcohol.
I was especially fond of Grace Chance's character.
Oh, Flora, she was the one who my husband cheated on me with, and her entire character was a gossip and a whore.
She was just horny. She was horny. Like, that's a trait, and that's a powerful trait. Don't get me wrong. But, like, she was literally defined by them. A little bit sexist. But we don't ask questions. So we find out that Cameron Rotier is the one that confiscated this gun.
Yeah.
And
The
took
only
it
one with
back
access to the gun.
to the PD, right? And then reviewing all this evidence, people start to come to their own conclusions. And this is how these murder mysteries usually work, right? People begin to isolate themselves. They develop, usually two theories on who could have done it. The two theories, by the end, were Bernie and Cameron.
I think 2 people voted for Bernie, and that's only because they had talked with Cameron, and Cameron had convinced them.
See, Brandon had a tough time.
He's so sweet. He doesn't know how to lie. So like when you talk to him about anything, he was super fidgety and he like avoided the questions.
I feel like Brandon has one role-playing voice. Do you know what I mean?
He does.
All
really
of his
does.
characters talk like Bradley.
This
is a super inside joke. Literally 4 people get this joke. Bradley.
He was in love with me.
He was in love with
Until we found out
Antonia's.
I was a human.
He wasn't human? Oh, he wasn't human.
No, right?
Nerds.
Nerds. Yeah, we play D&D, by the way. You guys are going to see, on the podcast banner, there's, just a picture, the painting with the man with the bowler cap, except it has a dragon over his face, and he's wearing a fedora. I got Jacob, okay, you tried to unionize, I got Jacob to do that for $5.
We tried to unionize against you in this podcast.
Well, that's because you went to Jacob. Jacob is the easiest person to
I
convince
know,
to do anything.
I know.
We managed to convince every other artist in the server not to do it for Davis. But Jacob.
I got Jacob.
We tried. We really
got him. I got him, and it's good,
You should have gone
too.
to him first. You should have gone to Jacob first and be like, do not do this.
Don't fall for it. Don't fall for it.
We did, but he's...
I ended up getting him, and the art is good too. You guys will see. It's decent art. I love it. I love it. And just to put a cap on this whole New Year's party, we're gonna tell you guys who did it. Again, Bernie, Cameron, all the evidence put on the table. Bernie bought the gun, right? He must have committed the murder, but we find out through the ledger that Cameron Rotier had taken money from Nick, and through a little bit of, analysis, we all come to the conclusion, 98% of us come to the conclusion that Cameron Rotier was the one behind the murder.
Can we talk about Mr. Hollywood again? I still don't get why he was there.
I don't get it.
It's
I don't.
like we bought the pack for I think 12 to 15 people because there were different levels of people. I think you could do 10 to 12 was the lowest and 20 plus was the highest. But I'm pretty sure by that point they just start adding in side characters that don't have anything to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my sister was like, I feel bad because so and so is a role that's not really important. But she was like, yeah, Antonia, I gave you a role that was bossy, and I was between Davis and Josh, the one who died.
I would have been a terrible investigator. Okay, because the person that was Nick Nemitz, the person that died in the first half hour, they became a private investigator after they died. So I'm terrible. I'm terrible at putting 2 and 2 together. So I wouldn't have been good for that role. I've got a great mafioso sort of personality. That's me. And I had the gold chain. You couldn't make me not the mafia guy. Anyways, we do the voting, and then basically unanimously, it's Cameron Rotier. Surprise. Poorly written. I really enjoyed the one we did the time before at Josh's birthday.
That was so good.
And maybe we'll talk about that one at a later date. I hardly remember anything.
We need to do
about
more
that
of these.
We do. And I was talking with Tyler after this. We were Tyler was you know how Tyler is. He's very confident about his abilities in general. He's like, yeah, I could write one of these super easy. And I'm like, maybe not.
No, they're so difficult to write for, especially with the objectives and the clues, making sure everything lines up.
So I'll probably help him out with that. Or of course we could just buy one. $50 between 10.
That was
15
people. It was $55. I also really enjoy how quiet my voice is compared to yours.
Well, I'm a loud talker. We'll boost your voice.
Yeah, the waveforms on Davis's voice are at least 2 times as big as Antonia's.
No, yeah, because in the mic is pointing towards me, so when I'm speaking, just look at it, Davis. Just when I'm speaking, it's here.
Yeah.
But when Davis is speaking, it's up here.
Wait, there's troughs and valleys.
This is also a visual joke that shouldn't be on.
I know. Okay, but maybe we'll post a picture of
Just cut it out. Just cut it out.
Cut it out. Irrelevant. We'll figure it out in post.
This is very offhand. This is very out of the blue. I just was staring at it.
Okay. So I don't have much more to say about the murder mystery, but once upon a time, when we were young, and we were naive, and perhaps we held Miss Tenjin in less contempt. I'm sorry, Miss Tenjin, if you read this podcast.
Read.
If you listen to this podcast, we don't like you very much, Miss Tenjin. So we said we were going to start a book club. So lo and behold, a couple months passed, and at this point, we both read a book. In fact, we both read 2 different books, right? You've read The Invisible Man, and we never did that. We never did the book club. So now we're going to break down this book, and we're going to do it in the only way that podcasters know how. We're going to do it like a true crime podcast.
God.
This is great. I've never listened to one of these things. Can you explain how what is behind true crime podcasts?
Okay, what level of true crime podcast are we going to? Are we going to the one that's for horny teenagers, or are we going to the one that's for people actually interested in true crime?
Can we specifically the murder? The analytics. What the specifics? We don't care about the horny.
Okay, we don't care about the horny.
We don't care about horny.
Great. So we're not going to go in detail describing. No, whatever. I've listened to far too many true crime podcasts. A lot of them really, first they kind of describe the background of the crime of the person here, and then they go into the details of what they did. So, and then they kind of break down the motivation after that. So after giving you some background on a character or background on a killer, and then what their murders were, they kind of try and break down the person to their bare essentials, kind of what happened in their life, why did they do this?
Okay. Well, yeah, that's perfect for Raskolnikov. Okay, so we're going to be talking about a book called Crime and Punishment. We're going to go back in time. We're going to take it back 150 years when, things were really epic. And we're going to talk about Russia, actually. Which, in general, is just, a really tragic place to live. Even to this day.
What do you mean? You mean you don't want to live in Russia? You don't want to be gay in Russia?
Russia, a very depressing country.
You don't want to be gay in Russia?
be gay in Russia?
Yeah.
That sounds like
You don't
it'd
want
be-
to get whisked off to a concentration camp in Russia?
Like,
As
there-
much as I would love to be like persecuted in Chechnya, I don't want to. So
So there are gulags in Russia,
yeah.
and everybody, like, that's a universally known thing. Is like, that's
It's
a
a joke,
bad
yeah.
thing. Like, going to the gulag is bad.
Okay.
I feel like Russia is the gulag of all, like, countries.
Okay,
so the
but
gulag
what-
of
what if-
Russia is the
what if-
gulag of the gulags?
Yes.
So here's how I've sort of imagined it in my head. We're derailing again, but this is a bit. This is a bit,
Yeah.
right? So we have a gay gulag. We put all the gay people in, and this is a joke. Comedians have pointed this out all the time. They're like, haha, gay people all in one place in prison. They've got nothing better to do. That sounds like a good idea to me, baby.
Oh, they're making that joke now with like the Mike Pence concentration camps, and people are like, when you're about to be drafted for World War III, but you're also
But
gay.
again, we have a World War III segment at the end if we have time.
Oh, do we really? Oh
yeah,
my
we
god.
do. We do. We're gonna talk a little bit
But
about
people,
World War
there
III.
are like gay people online who are like trying to decide whether to go to the concentration camp or the war.
Oh man, Jesus
so-
Christ! This is.
I'm
morbid.
actually excited to talk about that, so
God, yes.
continue
It'll be
with
fun,
your
it'll be fun.
Russian.
It'll be good. Okay, so let's take a look at what happened, right?
A lot.
So it's 1870 something. A man is literally probably an incel. Probably an incel.
Oh, he's absolutely.
Yeah,
an
I
incel.
get Alfred J. Prufrock energy from this guy. This guy lays
Manly
in his
energy.
bed all day. He doesn't do anything, but he has a theory. He has an idea about how the world works, and that's really all you need to be batshit insane. He thinks he needs money, but there's obviously a subtext to the whole situation. In his community, there is a mean old woman, you know, a pawn shop owner, not Rick Harrison, but some old lady, and she's real wicked. She like puts like 20% interest on 1 month loans. It's terrible woman, and he takes this and he's like, what is this woman worth to anybody? In fact, this person is disparaged by literally everybody in the community. In fact, there's a scene specifically, and I'll read from the book, where an officer, a literal police officer, is talking with some young student. And he says, well, you see, on one hand, we have a stupid, senseless, insignificant, bad-tempered, sick old hag, needed by no one and harmful to all. She herself does not know what she's living for, and she might easily die tomorrow of natural causes. Do you see what I mean? The implication being, who's going to care if we clip this old woman, right? So,
Who
by
does care if somebody pulls up and just erases her from the distance?
erases her.
This
So-
man watches Rick and Morty.
Yeah, of course. He's a nihilist. He's a nihilist in the sense that he's...
He has 1,000 IQ watermelon brains we can't even comprehend.
We can't. We really can't. So he sort of takes in all this stuff from the community through osmosis and through his own personal theories. And then what exactly happens? Give me scene for scene. He's at the door of this pawnbroker. What does our hero Raskolnikov do?
Okay, so it's been forever since I've read the book. It's been like a semester.
Well, it would tell us what you remember at least.
From what I remember at the very least, because I don't remember much of the actual scene, but I do remember his stupid motivation, which is that he thinks he's better than everyone else.
Yeah.
He thinks he's like above the law because he's a dumbass.
Mhm.
And I vaguely remember killing. I don't remember how she died because it didn't really matter. I do remember feeling bad because he also killed her sister.
I know.
In like a no
I
witnesses
know.
style.
I know. Okay,
he
so
was like.
here's how it goes. Raskolnikov, he had like a little like an axe and like an armpit
Oh, it was a
holster.
stupid axe.
Yeah. He was like, hey, I've got like a little trinket that's worth 3 rubles. You want to check this out? She's like taking it to the light, turning around her back to Raskolnikov, and she's like, this is worthless. And then as soon as she says that, he's like, phew, axe in the back of the head 3 times, and this woman just crumples to the floor. Her like daughter walks in. She's like,
Sister, I think it's her sister.
Her sister, really nice
Lizaveta,
girl,
yeah.
works for like a monastery. She walks in and she's like, holy shit! And she's like speechless. And then Raskolnikov walks up to this and just like, right between the eyes with the axe again. So, at first, Raskolnikov, he goes into it, he's like, okay, this is a wicked woman. We're going to kill the bad person. We're going to extract the rot. But then he sort of loses the intention halfway through the shit. If he was committed to, like, some moral, like, high ground, he wouldn't have, like, stabbed this poor girl, right? But we sort of lose the plot halfway through. So with that being said, let's sort of, like, take a look at all of his arrogance. Because Raskolnikov, he's sort of really into himself. So he has this theory that he'll be the next Napoleon, that he's going to take over the world, that he's just really epic in general.
So does he think all of this, and he is just like a regular dude? Like,
Okay,
he's not, like,
so
does he have like any
I think
regard
you
in
have
the?
a point on
I
that.
have a point on that because later in the docket.
But he thinks he's like above the law, above
Yes.
rules.
We learn about this like halfway through the book. There's a police investigator by the name of Porfiry, and he talks to Raskolnikov and he tries to like deduce through like intense psychological like interrogation whether or not he's the murderer, and he has like this suspicion. He sort of knows.
Press X to doubt.
Yeah, essentially. And he goes into the article, and he's like, the heart of the matter is that this gentleman's article, people are divided into ordinary and extraordinary. And among that, Raskolnikov considers himself to be part of this extraordinary. But my theory is he falls more into this category, which he describes later on. He unintentionally describes himself super hard, like a self-own, unlike anything before. All right, he says, there must be quite a few who love to imagine themselves as these advanced people. But of course, these people could be whipped from time to time from getting carried away, and they are reminded of their place. There's nothing more. In fact, you don't need to do anything. They'll whip themselves. So, Antonio, do you think Raskolnikov, he fits in that category, right? He punishes himself by the end of the book, right?
Oh, speaking of his punishments, he has a lot of like mental punishments too.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
his dreams.
The
I wrote an
psychological
essay about
torture. And I mean, that's sort of why I brought you onto this. Because you have a background, and you did like a project on this, like literally last year. Well, not specifically
Yeah,
Raskolnikov,
I understand.
but you've researched mental health. How do we diagnose Raskolnikov? What do you think is going on in his head?
A lot.
Is there anything that's going on? Of
Well,
course there is, right?
Yeah, just specifically, I can't give you specific symptoms because I'm not a psychiatrist, but just looking through his dreams, because, like the first dream with the horse, whatever.
Mhm.
The second dream, hold on, I wrote about it here. So the second and third dream are pretty similar. I kind of have some quotes here, but like the second dream is kind of like he's hearing violent stuff going on, and the third dream is like he's kind of seeing a murder happen. So he's kind of thinking back on these things, and he has a lot of guilt surrounding this, and obviously a lot of anxiety surrounding being caught. Because, like, his worst fear is not, like, I'm a terrible person, but it's like, oh, shit.
They're gonna get me.
I'm
They're
be
gonna
caught.
get me, bro. And you can say, he is so bad at lying. He's
He's
so
a
bad.
narcissist, is my
Yeah,
thing.
that's what he is.
Like, his whole focus is not on other people and how he affects others, it's how everyone else affects him.
Mhm.
Like, to him, his narcissistic tendencies everything revolves around him.
Yeah.
He kills the pawnbroker and her sister, and his first thought isn't, oh, shit, I killed someone.
His
His first thought is, I might be a bad person and something might come for me.
Mhm.
And so that's why kind of this whole thing happens. Like he sees, like in the first dream, I think it's like a horse getting beaten.
Mhm.
Otherwise, we're watching God.
Yeah.
He sees like a horse getting beaten, and he can't do anything about it. And so he kind of like puts himself into Lisavetta's shoes, where she was watching her sister die. So really, all his dreams are himself being put into other situations and everything revolving around him. So my man's a huge narcissist just in general,
Mhm.
but past just narcissism, like my man needs therapy and a hug.
Yes, and that's just symptomatic of living in Russia. If you live in Russia, we're gonna come over there. We'll fly over and we'll give you a hug. Of course, you're probably not listening to this podcast, but we'll come over and we'll give you a hug. Anywho, I sort of thought about this. I was reading, and halfway through, this is more pop culture. Even if you haven't read the book, I feel like you'll get this. So let's think about this. There's a successful student with his own theories on justice, and then he sort of turns to an extrajudicial form of exacting revenge on what he perceives as evil. He's a writer. He lives in the East. He kills people. Who am I talking? Brody, you're laughing. You know who I'm talking about.
No, go ahead.
We're talking about Light Yagami, right? We're talking. Okay, here it is. Here's the crossover. Look. Death Note was probably
Are you
inspired.
comparing Crime and Punishment
Yes,
to
to Death Note.
Note?
Okay, so this is where the pop culture element of this podcast, because we'll be talking.
Davis.
No. I think there's something to this theory. There's something to this. Look,
Take a breath.
No matter how much regard that this theory might have,
You're
that was
comparing
the last
anime.
person. I was thinking like Stephen King maybe.
No.
I was thinking like real life serial killers.
Yeah, or like actual serial
And then Davis
killers,
goes Death
like
Note.
the Zodiac killer writing his whole
His whole manifesto.
But think about it, like
manifesto.
point
But
for point.
No.
Like, literally,
then you
Jeffrey
go
Dahmer.
to Light Yagami from fucking.
No. But there's merit to this.
Okay.
I wouldn't say
Okay,
I wouldn't say
continue.
point by point. You look at it. Student, his own sense of what's right and what's wrong. He has an intense scene with an investigator in which the investigator definitely knows that he perpetrated this murder. So you go down the list. I think that there's parallels here, unintentionally or not.
It might have actually been intentional.
I feel like it was
because
intentional.
We talk a lot about dreams in the sense of Crime and Punishment, but in Death Note, you have Ryugen, what are they called?
The demon people.
Do you remember the name? I don't remember the exact name.
I watched that
Great.
3 years ago.
I watched it twice, but you have Ryuk in them, and they kind of present themselves as the dreams, as the punishment, and then the illness that comes about. There are these bouts of anxiety. So your theory is merit, but I hate your theory.
I think it's a good theory. I think it's a good theory.
Just because it's a good theory doesn't mean I'm not allowed to hate
Look,
it.
you can hate my theory, but you have to understand that I'm right and you're wrong.
I didn't say you were wrong.
Do we want to talk about World War III, guys?
I want to continue to hear your theory on Light Yagami and Crime and Punishment.
Well, you see, I haven't fleshed my theory out to a certain degree, but I think Miss Tenjum, when she gets my essay, she's going to find that there's more references to anime than she would have expected.
Homestuck.
Make the connection.
I'm not gonna make a
Make the
connection to
connection.
Homestuck.
Do it.
Screw
Do
you.
it. Do it.
No.
So on AP Lit exams, they don't tell you what counts as literature with merit. That's what they say, literature with merit. They don't tell you what it is. So, in a sense, Homestuck could be literature with merit.
I mean, it could be. It's 8,000 pages, and it's really annoying to read. I'm trying to think of how I would connect this.
You know,
with
when
Homestuck.
I signed up for this, I didn't expect on the first 45 minutes there'd be a reference to one anime and two.
No, but that's how we make our podcast accessible.
That's how you make
Because
art.
not everybody has read this 500-page long Russian novel from the 19th century. But everybody has watched Death Note.
Not everybody's
Whether
watched
it's been the
Everybody's
Netflix iteration, which
Screw
is
the
garbage.
Netflix US iteration.
Netflix-
I watched it at 2 in the morning with Brandon.
Netflix, it was a garbage movie. Or the anime. I feel like 70% of people in high school have watched Death Note.
70% of all high schoolers in the entire world,
In the
even
entire
those living in
world.
third world countries,
Yes.
have watched Death Note.
That's a bold claim, son.
I feel like, I feel like it's an anime that has cultural impetus. It's like, it's part of the cultural zeitgeist, right? Like, people know about this, even if they haven't even watched it. People know about it.
Can I make I was gonna make the connection to Danganronpa, but I feel like it's a terrible idea.
I feel like 3 people will know what you're talking about, but at this point,
I don't
we've
even know
read
what you're talking about.
Crime and Punishment. We're talking about a book that literally nobody has read except us. So if you want to, go ahead. I feel like we've already. If you're listening, we've lost you already. So go ahead.
All right. Well, there are 2 serial killers I can make a connection to in game. I'm just gonna talk about V3, whatever. Andrew Shelton will make fun of me if he listens to this.
Okay.
In any case, there's a serial killer who's very very close to his sister at a young age, incestually close, and she died of cancer or some chronic illness or whatever. And he was so upset about this that he created a tulpa for her in his mind. So he split his own personality. So kind of tying back to that whole dream psychological thing that we were talking about in that illness, as a sense. And because of that, he felt like he had to make it up to his sister because his sister was so sick in life, she never had any friends. So he decided to go kill 100 girls that he found worthy to send to his sister in heaven.
Jesus
So he
Christ.
did this. This man's a serial
Jesus
killer.
fuck.
And of course, this is like a whole thing. Like this whole game is weird. But so he always wears a mask. When he pulls down the mask, he's got like red lipstick on, and he talks as his sister. He talks to himself as his sister, incestually towards himself as his sister.
No.
So this.
So, like, when somebody tells him to go screw himself, he does.
Okay.
This is kinda
In
good.
any case, I was just making that connection there because he has this twisted sense of self where he's killing these people for his sister, for his beloved.
Mhm.
Man. It's
Well,
a mess.
I mean, that guy is kind of nasty, but I feel like I'm going to move it back. I'm going
Please,
to turn it back.
go
I'm
back.
turning back the dial a little bit. I feel like our boy Raskolnikov sort of redeems himself by the end.
He does.
He
Yeah.
does. And like throughout this, I don't know if you made the connection, but there was several times that they brought up Lazarus, right?
Mhm.
For those that are unacquainted with the Bible, and trust me, I'm not familiar with it either. Lazarus of Bethany is actually a saint that was resurrected 4 days after Christ, not 3, because then he'd be ripping off Jesus. So 4 days after he died, Jesus came and he was like, "Bruh, I'm gonna wake this dude up. Watch this." So this dude wakes up. So the author Dostoevsky, he references Lazarus several times, and he tries to make this connection between Raskolnikov's arc and I hate referring to like biblical characters as having arcs, but
Do it anyway.
Lazarus's arc, right? Do you think he does, like, what points to the fact that this might have been like a sort of resurrection of sorts? Like a spoiler alert, our boy Raskolnikov, he goes to jail. He goes to jail, like the gulags of Siberia
For 7 years.
for 8 years.
8 years. He says 7 years, but then it's 8 years. But in any case, resurrection. I have a dream for that actually.
Okay.
Because I like you started talking about it and I realized because I remember I read an essay on the dreams. So the fourth dream, because there are like 4 big dream sequences throughout this book. The fourth dream is a plague of disease and fire that burns up the entire earth.
Mm-hmm.
And so as this kind of goes on, like the plague is taking over the world, and it's kind of the manifestation of his guilt and his crime in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
And he, away from the dream, right, is like the fire is killing everyone in the world, and he's like in a cold sweat, obviously. He's feeling super guilty. And the dream is what changes his mindset. He realizes that him not confessing has affected more people than just himself. So this is the first dream where we see I don't like his name, Raskolnikov. This is the first dream where we see him move past these narcissistic tendencies and think about other people.
Mm-hmm.
So as he wakes up from the dream, both physically and spiritually, he's kind of encouraged to confess by the people around him. And he does end up confessing and going to jail, and it's like the most free he's ever been because he's joyful that he's finally confessed and that he's rid of this guilt.
It takes him like 7 or 8 years because he's just like the epilogue. It's literally the last 2 pages.
Yeah.
Where he's like sitting on the log, he's looking at like the Siberian like wastelands, and he sees like nomadic tribes, and he's like, I feel a certain kinship with nature, man. Sonia comes up, he embraces her, he starts kissing her feet. It's like his redemption arc is
Man,
complete.
really hit
So
like
for real.
feet fetish.
Hitting every note. I think there's 3 separate occasions where Raskolnikov kisses somebody's feet.
Oh, he definitely has.
He's
foot
got a
fetish,
thing.
bro.
He's got a thing.
Oh,
Definitely got a foot
But he
fetish.
was redeemed. He may have a foot thing. He was redeemed. So I think the moral of the story here is like
If you
don't.
kill someone, confess.
Okay.
Wait, I don't think that's the moral. What was your
No,
moral?
how about just don't kill people? That's a pretty good
Okay.
moral to have.
And here's the thing. Like murder must have been so easy to get away with back in the day. No DNA. You could just leave anytime. Several times he was offered the opportunity to just like go to America, man. Just take your sister and your friend, Rasumike, love that guy, great character, and just go to America. You escape all your problems. But like he just refuses that. He literally wanted to get caught by the end of the book. So the moral of the story, I suppose, of this whole podcast is don't murder people. It sucks. But
Is that the whole moral of like the entire podcast? Like, is every
That's,
single
like,
episode gonna end
every-
with
entire
don't murder
discography.
the entire discography of this podcast, just don't murder people. Be good people, man.
people? Just don't be a terrible person.
So, speaking of terrible things that are going to happen, there's a whole bunch of talk. We've sort of seen the memes. We've seen the news. It'd be a disservice to not talk about this murder in the podcast. So, right now, somebody got assassinated over in Iran, and now we'll probably go to war over it. So I just sort of wanted to, like, are we going to World War? Do you think that's a thing that's happening? Maybe
800 troops have already been mobilized
Yeah.
to Iran.
we love that. We love that, folks.
I want to say that we're not going to, and it's just going to be another terrible war, not a world war. But knowing how things are going right now, like, it might end up happening. And then, like, there's, like, the talk of, like, the joke of concentration camps and stuff. So, like,
All right. So Antonia, tell me, as a gay woman, are you going to, as soon as they put in the female draft, are you going to be drafted, or are you going to tell Mike Pence, man, just electrocute me, man?
okay, so they're going to pull up the draft, and I'm going to be
Of course.
like, sorry, can't go to the military. I'm actually transing my gender. I'm gay. And then as soon as Mike Pence turns towards me, that was the worst sentence I've ever seen.
I'm transing my gay, guys.
Transing my gender. I think someone mentioned that in a server room, and just it was a trans person, and they were like, just trans your gender like me if you don't want to go to war. Anyway, I'll just turn to them and be like, hey, I'm gay, can't go to war. Then as soon as they come to pick me up from the concentration camps, never been straighter in my life, dude. It's just back and forth.
Back and forth. They'll have you on loop for a while. It'll be good. It'll be good. So I don't know. I don't know what else to say about World War III. I mean, the memes are alright. I don't know, guys. Check out my latest post. It's sort of about World War III. It's okay. What are your thoughts?
My opinion on that, and myself being drafted, if I were to be drafted, I would be.
No, they would need you. They would
Yeah.
need you because you've got the tool
Brody,
belt.
yeah.
Brody's very utilitarian. He'd like pull up to like a tank. Like a
Don't you
tank
look
would
at
have.
Yes, I work at Ace Hardware on Woodruff Road.
You're the first to be drafted.
Don't
You're the
judge
first to be
yourself.
drafted. Look, a
Yeah.
mortar shell's gonna hit like a tank or something,
Yeah.
and then Brody's gonna come up with the little keychain tool belt, and he's gonna like just put a corkscrew in the
Yeah.
tank, and then shit's just repaired.
But-
Shit's just repaired. You're
no.
the first one that gets recruited, 100%.
Well, yeah. Here's my thing. I will totally go, and if I just get to be like a wrench monkey and fix helicopters and jeeps and stuff, and not see the line
But
of
as
battle,
soon
I'm
as they
fine.
put an M16 in your hand, you're just like, I'm out, chief.
Yeah.
I'm out, chief.
Like, I'll fix tanks and jeeps and helicopters all day, but once you hand me a gun and tell me to go kill another person,
Yeah.
I kind of have an issue with that, considering I wasn't even alive when 9/11 happened. So
In all seriousness, if like I had to choose between going to a gay concentration camp, I don't like
That'd
a
be
conversion
terrible.
camp.
I wouldn't do that. I
But,
would
like-
I would fake it super hard. I wouldn't want to do that.
I wouldn't. My issue is I wouldn't want to do either option. Like I'm not gonna go to war for something like this.
Reject the false dichotomy.
My Chilean passport is like in the process, I suppose. Like we're still figuring that
Mhm.
out. But like, I don't want to go. Like it's an issue because like I can't go anywhere now because Chile has like all these riots going on. We're not going to get into that. Why don't I just not?
Just not.
And I'm just not
I-
going to get into the military.
Here's
well,
my.
yeah, you
I'm-
can just go to jail.
The concentration camps. That's my issue. Is either
I'm-
concentration camp.
Well, just don't say you're gay, and then they'll just take you to jail for not going for the draft, and then
Brody, have you
Done.
seen me? Have you seen my outfits? Brody, have you met me?
no.
I'm very obviously gay.
It's all good, G.
I'm going to Australia. That's my plan.
I'll go with you.
See, the standards are gonna be super low because the whole country's on fire,
Yeah.
right? So there's gonna be no They're gonna have people that repopulate Australia once it literally burns to the ocean,
Yeah, my
like
plan was
Atlantis,
to-
just like sinks into the ocean. They're gonna need people.
Yeah.
So I'll be one of the first. I'll be like a pioneer in that respect. I'll take the ashes and I'll cultivate just all of Australia into like a jungle. It'll be great. It'll be great.
My plan was just to get like a bus,
A bus.
and I'll just take it somewhere.
All right.
Go in the middle of Mexico or Canada. You know what? Canada's kind of cooling it right now, so I'll go to Canada.
I saw a meme. It was like the map of the United States and just North America. It's like the guy was like, send Iran this map, and it had United States like over Canada and then Canada over the United States. So hopefully we don't get bombed. We sort of murdered somebody. Please don't kill us, Iran.
It was a general, right?
It was a general. It was a
Okay.
general dude, like
Yeah.
top ranking guy.
The
So
one who like
it
said something mean about Dunald, and then he immediately in a drone strike got killed.
So it would sort of be like the equivalent of like killing like our Secretary of State, just like we just murdered like Mike Pompeo, just dies.
Just like that.
Yeah. So I don't know, guys. I think that this podcast is coming to a close. I didn't really plan out a conclusion. Do you have any closing thoughts, Antonio?
I'm not gonna do that now. I've got nothing.
You've got nothing.
I'm done.
You